So in terms of valuation, I just want to say a couple of points. There is a buyer's perspective and a seller's perspective. Traditionally, the buyer's perspective is you want too much, and the seller's perspective is you're not paying enough. That's the summary of the next 4 slides. But to give you a little bit more flesh to that, the buyers do have some perspectives, and if you want to maximize your valuation and to sell your company for the highest possible price, you need to understand how they work. Accretive, dilutive, these days that's almost a no-brainer. Accretive means that you actually help their earnings per share, but more importantly, I think, is a scale issue. You have to provide scale to the company. You know, if you're trying to sell to a multi-billion-dollar company and you have only a small amount of revenues and or profits, you don't scale. You don't make enough of a difference to them for them to invest the time and effort of management or even the risk of doing a bad deal. So you have to scale. Again, that's part of thinking globally. Think outside of your box. Whatever you do, they don't want to overpay. Obviously, they always consider, is it worth it to make it or buy it? Make it will also mean, let's say, entering the Polish market. How much would that cost me to do it organically? Can I do it? What are my alternatives? Cultural fit, etc. Some buyer constraints, the availability to cash. Debt is a non-issue these days. Very easy to get debt from publicly traded companies that are profitable. What do buyers really buy? This is interesting to a lot of entrepreneurs. It's not just revenues and profits, although that helps. You have vision, research, you have management, etc. You have your domain expertise, your actual physical presence, your market share, your customer base. And I underscore one point here, business model. Business model, there was a little bit of discussion about this today, but not that much. It's a major valuation differentiator. Business model, software as a service, selling your software. There was a lot of discussion about Web 2.0, so in a way that's also a business model issue. I'm talking about people who have software and are selling solutions, let's say to banks or insurance companies or whoever, to start transferring or switching your business model to software as a service rather than selling it as a product. Actually, if you look at this, within each sector we have the light blue and the dark blue bars. The dark blue bars are the ones that are representing the valuations of publicly traded companies that have software as a service business model versus software as a product. And the green bar is the premium. Why I point this out is it shows how important your business model is, not only what you're doing. Maximizing your value, you need to differentiate yourself among the buyers. Find out what they're looking for. Try to set up partnerships with the buyers, etc. Learn more about their business. Look at their SEC filings, look at the blogs from the CEOs or whatever, and need to communicate with them. The same kind of concept that we were talking about with the venture capitalists. If you have a strategy, okay, one is venture capital, but eventually if you're going to trade sale, you do need to communicate, you need to promote yourself, you need to get into partnerships with these companies. Understand the buyers, what they're looking for, fit, synergies, etc., and understand that you're selling to a number of different constituencies. You need to sell to the guy who's responsible for technology, the CTO, head of R&D. You need to sell to the CFO. You need to sell to the senior vice president of corporate strategy, the CEO, the board of directors. This is a complex sale, but when you do it, you end up with that check, which is tax the capital gains. And what we talk about, it's a question of, what are you trying to do? Why are you starting this business? Most of the time people are starting the business, for some sort of goal. Maybe to buy that sailboat or whatever it is, that second home. That's what enables you to finally do that. Financial buyers, I didn't talk that much about them. They are different than strategic buyers. At the same time, they've made so many acquisitions and so many buyouts in the recent 5 years that they've actually mutated a bit to become strategic buyers. They have so many companies in their portfolios that they could actually buy a company and have synergies and strategic value out of that and pay competitive prices, and in fact are outbidding strategic buyers often enough. So you should go to private equity players as well if you have the scale and the size. The downside is that they do drive their models significantly by earnings. The seller's view, of course, is going to be a lot of different things. It's not just about price. Are you going to stick with the company? How long are you going to stick around? What's going to happen with your employees? You go to clubs with these people, you work together for years, and you know each other. So you want to trade off not only maximize price, but coming together with the best possible partner. And also, is it my last chance to secure wealth? Obviously, it's a different attitude if you're a 32-year-old selling your company and you have 30 more productive years in front of you, or if you're 62, tired and want to stop doing the business. Ultimately, you're going to have to talk to the most number of buyers possible. You don't know what your company's worth. It's impossible to know what your company's worth. Company's not like a piece of property. You can't compare it to your neighbor's house and say, okay, he got that much money for it, therefore my house is worth this much money. Every single company is totally different, and you have to present it, and you have to be able to negotiate the deal. People are expanding globally. There's always a fear of losing a deal to someone else, and as I mentioned before, innovation comes from the small startups. So therefore, there's going to be a continuum of M&A deals for basically ever. As long as there are entrepreneurs and venture capital investing, there's always going to be a trade, sell, exit. Closing thoughts, the people who will be successful are the ones that establish high barriers of entry. What's a high barrier of entry? Well, 30, 50 million downloads a day, as we were talking about before, or 70,000 page hits per day in certain sectors. When you start getting the mass, the critical mass, and the eyeballs, it's not so easy to switch an entire network over to somebody else's channel or someone else's web page. It might be the same thing in terms of a market. If you have a total grasp on the banking community in the local market, that's going to be a high barrier of entry for an external party to come in and try to grow organically, which will make you more interesting to potentially acquire. Obviously, revenue model and recurring revenue. Who's it going to be tough for? It's going to be tough for the last guy standing. And that's a message that actually probably is a good segue into our global concept, because in essence, you're going to need to be a global player to have, to serve that long tail, as they say, to ramp up and have the economies of scale to continue to compete. Otherwise, you're going to end up losing to whoever comes into this market, whether organically or acquiring a competitor. So you need to pay attention to what's going on in your market. And if a competitor is being acquired, you might already be too late, but you better start looking around to see what your options are before it's too late.